Okay, we're going to learn the Rebbe's Maamar Ani Ledodi in Maamar Lukotun Chelik Dalid, page Shin Samach Gimel. Okay, this Maamar is also Ani Ledodi Vedodi, but the Rebbe goes through and explains in great detail the Rebbe's Maamar of Lekutei Torah that we learned many times. It says Ani Ledodi Vedodi. It's a pasuk. Shlomo Melech says in Shir Hashirim, I to my beloved and my beloved is to me. So that's an acronym, Rosh Tevis Elul. That's brought down in, like he says, Avudram all over the place. Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li is an acronym of Elul. Why? Umevar Lekutei Torah by Maamar Divrei Matchul Zeh Hashayches the Elul Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li. He explains in Now, the Rebbe's Maamar explains what's the connection between Elul and Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li. Kiba Elul is a source of the Lasat. Elul is the Aved of Tishrei, which is Tshuva, which is an awakening from below. Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li. There's another pasuk in Shir Hashirim that says, Dodi Li v'Ani Loi. I am to him. So Chassidus explains that's Nisan and Tishrei. Nisan is a Gilui Momaila, Nigla Le'em Melech Malchi Amloch HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Dodi Li v'Ani Loi. Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li is a Revedim Momato L'mayla. But Rosh Hashanah v'Yom HaKippurim, yet so Elul is the Revedim Momato L'mayla. But Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is Amshach Momaila L'mata. Is a revelation from above lower. It's Rusa de Le'elo Vedodi Li. That's the level of Ani Ledodi Li. So Ani Ledodi is Elul. Vedodi Li is Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur when Hashem becomes our king. And therefore this revelation, Amshacha, that comes on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is through it's through the awakening of Elul. In other words, how do you get to Dodi Li? Through Ani Ledodi. You have the Aved of Elul, Ani Ledodi Momato L'mayla. Then you come to the level of Dodi Li and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Which Dodi Li is also part of Ani Ledodi Rosh Tevis Elul. So l'chayr then it doesn't make sense. Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li is an acronym for Elul, Rosh Tevis. Yet the Rebbe is explaining Ani Ledodi is Elul and Dodi Li is Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. That's Tishrei. So how do we have the whole thing of Dodi Li is also part of the Ani Ledodi? Kisarut Zedel Sata Sheba Elul. Ani Ledodi is Gam Akdom Alam Shach Vedodi Li Sheba Rosh Hashanah v'Yom HaKippurim. Okay? So therefore the Rebbe is explaining that in the Maamar that because what causes the Dodi Li is Ani Ledodi, so therefore it's all part of the Aved of Elul. Because what's causing the Dodi Li is Elul. So Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li, through the Ani Ledodi, you come for Dodi Li. But Tzarech L'Biur, though, we need to understand. Ki Mizeh Sheitzi is Vav Lamed, which is the Rosh Tevis Vedodi Li. Are part of the word of Elul Atzma, Mashma. See, the Rebbe seems to say like this. Ani Ledodi is the preparation for Dodi Li. But because it's the preparation, it means it's part of it. But the Rebbe is asking, the letters Vav Lamed is part of Elul, the word. So it's not Hagdama, Elul is Hagdama for it is Elul. Shebechodesh Elul lo rak Hagdama. It's not only a preparation and the preparation for Dodi Li, Shebechodesh Elul Gama Inyan Dodi Li. That means even in Elul, you also have a Dodi Li. That means not only is it Ani Ledodi Elul and Dodi Li Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the Rebbe is saying the fact that Dodi Li is part of the Rosh Tevis of Elul means that in Elul itself you have Dodi Li. That's why it's part of the acronym, the Rosh Tevis of Elul. Then he says, Mamsho B'Maamar, now the Rebbe continues in the Maamar. Sheba Elul is man Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. What's unique about Elul is the Chedesh Rachamim, because that's the third time Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Har Sinai, the last 40 days until Yom Kippur. And that's when Hashem said, Salachti Keverach, Hashem Korachim V'chanun, and so on. Hagam Sheba Elul. L'chayra, Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim is a revelation of above. Yet Elul is the Avodah Milmata L'mayla. So again, it doesn't. If Elul is a revelation you give Midas Rachim, then it's not Avodah Milmata. Hagam Sheba Elul Zani Ledodi Sarus L'Sata Bikama came nevertheless. Sarus L'Sata Shala Adam. This awakening from the person down below. Especially if it's far away from Malukos, where does he get this ability to all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, wake up to become close to Hashem? This is through a kayach from above. So granted, Elul is Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim, which is not the same thing as Ani Ledodi Avodah Milmata. So the Rebbe is explaining, where does the Jew get the ability to do Ani Ledodi? Because Yud Gimel Midas Rachman are revealed. The Gilu Yud Gimel Midas Rachman Sheba Elul, he says, Gilu is there, is the L'chol Echad V'echad Mi Yisrael. Applies to every single Jew, Gam L'Archeikem B'Yosef. Even a person who's extremely far, no matter how far they are, like in the Maamar of Ani Ledodi, the Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe says, Melech Basada. The king comes into the field. But in the Kitzur over there, the Alter Rebbe says, not only is it coming to Melech Basada, but the Melech comes to the Midbar too. Now you have Ir, you have Sada, and you have Midbar. Ir is civilization. Sada, you don't live in a field, it's not civilized. But Sada is the source of all the food to be able to be in the ear. And then you have Midbar, which is totally empty and void. Tail Vavayu, so to speak. It's completely nothing. So the ultimate distance, so ear is mamish close, that's where the king's palace is. Sada is people far from the, but not really far, because it produces stuff. And then you have Midbar. So even though the Alter Rebbe's whole mashal is Melech Basada, but in the Kutut itself says that it's really coming into Midbar also. When it's seen as Kram, L'Archeikem B'Yosef. When it's seen as Koyach Momayla. That itself is the Ker Koyach from above, Alo Avodah of Ani Ledodi. In other words, where does the Avodah of Ani Ledodi to every single Jew, even the distant Jew, comes from? It comes from Doidili. Elul. So what's the difference then between Elul and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, which is also Gilui Momayla? He says like this: the Gilui Sheba Elul, this revelation from above and Elul to stimulate the Jews, is Be'ikar Rak Nasinas Koyach. It's giving the Koyach for the Jew to do it. V'lo Shah Gilui Ma'ered Es Adam. V'avoda Atzma B'mi Adam. The Rebbe explains it this. Hashem gives us the koyach to do it. He's not awakening us. He's not bringing us to the city. He's not bringing us to this giving. He's giving us the koyach to be able to go to that level. But it's not a gilui mamayla. It's a gilui mamayla in a way that it's only nasinas koyach. It gives us the ability to do it. Or they use the mashal of the Alter Rebbe the Maamar. When the king comes into the field, it only gives the Jew the ability to go meet the king. Because Alter Rebbe in the Mashal says, all the people go to meet the king in the field. The king is accessible. He's not making you come. But the fact that he's accessible means he's giving you the ability that you can come to the king. So he says, the Gilui Mamayla of Elul is not to be ma'ered Adam that awakens the person. It's only the koyach to do it. But the avodah itself comes in the person Ani Ledodi. In other words, if somebody gives you the ability to do something, they're not doing it for you. They're giving you the accessibility for you to do it. So without that accessibility from above, you're not going to be able to do it because you're very far. But nevertheless, it helps that you should do it, but who's doing it? It's not a Gilui Mamai that's doing it for you. It's the Nasinas Koyach for you to do it. That's the advantage of Elul, even though l'chayra, your Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is higher than Elul. That's a total Gilui Mamayla, and Elul is only the Aveda what we do, it's limited. He said, the Basaris Yemei Tshuva, Flat Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the Gilui is Ba'efen, Shah Gilui Me'erer Sa'adam. It actually awakens the person. It's not giving the koyach to do it. It's awakening you. The Aveda Sa'adam, and the Aveda of the person then is only an offshoot of the awakening from above. But Ikar Inyav Amal Aveda Sa'adam, Aveda B'Koyach Atzmi, that's primarily in Elul. In other words, Elul is the Aveda B'Koyach Atzmi. Completely. The only thing the king is doing, he's giving us the koyach and the ability to do it. But we're doing it. If we didn't go out to meet the king, we're not doing it. So he gives us I'm here, I'm accessible for you, come. So he's only giving you the koyach to do it. He's not awakening you to do it. He says, I'm here, you can come. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is a Gilui Mamayla. So the Aveda Sa'adam of Tishrei is an offshoot of the Gilui Mamayla. But Elul, though, is more Aveda Koyach Adam, more Momata Lamayla than Vedodi of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. By the way, that's why it's another interesting point. Ani Ledodi Vedodi, Mefarshim say the last four letters as Yud. Ani Ledodi Vedodi is the 4 Yud, which is the 40 days, Samar Chodesh Elul, through Yom Kippur. So not only is Deidi Li part of Elul, but it's the 40 days, which is Mamish from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur. So he says, when you learn the Alter Rebbe's Maamar simply, you don't learn it like the Rebbe is learning it here now. The Rebbe is explaining the Alter Rebbe's Maamar. That what's the Alter Rebbe is explaining? That l'cheira, how can Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li be Elul if the Deidi Li is Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? And also, it's part of Elul, not so the Alter Rebbe. So the Rebbe is explaining what the Alter Rebbe is explaining in the Maamar. What the Alter Rebbe is explaining in the Maamar is that the Aveda Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li means there's Yud Gimel Midas Rachma, but that's still Ani Ledodi because it's only giving you the koyach to do it. It's not doing it for you. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's the Gilui Mamayla that's influencing, not only giving the koyach, but it's helping mamish, helping you do it. Now the Rebbe says like this: in order to explain that the Gilui of Yud Gimel Midas Rachman, the two aspects. Number one, Shagilui da Elul L'Kol Echad VeEchad Gam LaArcheika BeYeser. There's two things the Rebbe explained before. Number one, the Gilui of Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim is to somebody even if they're very, very distant. And the second thing is, Afal Pikein, the Gilui is not Me'eridus of Adam, it doesn't awaken the person, because then it's not your doing. It is Rak Nesinas Koyach, it's only a Nesinas Koyach. So L'chaire, it seems to be a little bit contradictory. The Gilui is awakening the most distant person, even in Midbar. And yet, the Gilui is not awakening you, is giving you the koyach to do it. So how do you reconcile these two things? So he says, Mamshech Ba'Maamar, the Alter Rebbe explains in the Maamar, that Gilui, the Yud Gimel Midas Rachman Be'elul. This revelation of Yud Gimel Midas Rachman and Elul is similar to Melech Basada. Okay? And that's why he uses the mashal of Melech Basada to explain, from one side, Yud Gimel Midas Rachman is a revelation to everybody, even in Midbar. And from the second side, it's only giving you the koyach, not doing it for you. So he says, this is the mashal of Melech Basada. The machluk and bein Melech Basada. Because the difference between the king in the field, Melech Behecholoi, and the king in his chambers, in his palace, there's two differences. There's two differences between the way the king is in the field and the way the king is in the palace. But Negea l'dargas hagilui. In other words, as far as the gilui is, Iker agili the melech yafe betachzanei nechal. Like it says, the king you have to see with glory. Ubehecham malchusay is when the king is in the palace. Shubavush malchus bekesem malchus. When the king is wearing the royal garments and the royal crown. In the palace, the king is dressed with royal garments and the crown. So the gilui of the king is more, the revelation of royalty is more in the palace than it is in the Sod. In the Sod, he comes dressed like everybody else. He's accessible to everybody else. No, 1 second. And on the other hand, when he's in the field, then he dresses like, he's wearing like regular garments. But the revelation is more in the Sada. In other words, like this. The Gila of the king himself, to himself, is more in the palace. It's royalty. But where is the king more revealing to the masses? When he's in the field, because in the palace nobody sees him. Why? When the king is in the palace, you can't just walk into the throne room. Yeah, you have to be reshus. And all can come, the unique people, the chosen people, Yechidus Gula. Okay, and yet when the king is in the field, Rishoyim, the Alter Rebbe says, Rishoyim permitted. And then the Fried Rebbe adds in the Maamar Yecholim, not only they have permission, but they could, whoever wants can meet the king. And not only that, he shows them with the good countenance, as the English word for it is, and he's laughing at everybody, from the word yischak, schek. So now, in other words, not only that, but when you go to the field, not only is the king accessible, unlike the palace, he's not accessible, but he's accessible in a way that he smiles at you. So it is in the nimshul. And also I said that's similar to the king in the palace. Because once the king, as Alter Rebbe says in the Moshe, afterwards, after the king greets everybody in the field, then they go back to the city. And then Alter Rebbe says in the Moshe, when you go back to the city, not everybody can meet him.
And he said, when the king comes to the field, on his backward, he takes you with him to the palace.
Yeah, but he don't get into the palace. He takes you back ha'ira, to the city, he says. Not to the palace. That seeing the king in royalty in the palace, that awakens, not a koyach, but that actually awakens an awe of the king. When you see the king in the palace, that he throws a fear and an awe on everybody. That's the king in the palace. That's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Yemei Din. Yemei Yira. Right? Hamelech, Hamelech, Hamelech. But in order to feel this Gila of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Be'ika is primarily after Gedimus Aveda the Chedeshalu. By going out to meet the king, through having the accessibility of the king, and the king smiling at you, that gives you the koyach to be with the king in the palace, so to speak, of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur in the days of awe and fear. But they become, and the Rebbe is saying like this, through the Avodah, the Rebbe says, through the Avodah of Elul, you become the chosen people that can go to the king. You become the chosen people that can go to the king in the palace. Shabam v'chid is nasa through the Avodah of Elul. You become the chosen people of the nation, like you said before. Only they go into the king. V'yechid is gula shenichnasim leichel hamelech. So the Rebbe is explaining like this. What's the difference if the king is in the palace, which is Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, or the king is in the field? The king in the palace is a greater gilui, but it's not accessible to everybody. You have to be Yechidus Gula, you have to be Mufchar Shabam. What happens though when the Melech is Basada? So you don't have the same royalty look. He doesn't instill fear, because the king doesn't look like a king. He's not dressed with all the shtick. So he doesn't throw fear on you. But he makes you he's accessible, that gives you the strength to come to him. And by the king smiling at you, now you become the chosen people that go back to the city with him.
So someone who doesn't do the Avodah Elul, what happens?
They're lacking in the Aved of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. But because we live in a world that, like the Rebbe said, nowadays you can go straight to Tshuva Ilah without Tshuva Tata, so it's possible to come to Rosh Hashanah and Kippur without Elul. But nevertheless, you're still lacking the Keli of Elul to really have it proper. But it's never too late. Okay, Avanasin is Koyach. Yep. Vagilui de Elul melech dugmas melech basada. Be'efin shagilui eina me'eres adam. Again, the king in the field doesn't throw an awe because he's not wearing royalty. He's not just royal. Urak nasin is koyach la'aveda. It's only in the giving the strength for aveda. But what is in the scene is koyach la'aveda? What is the giving of the strength? It's even to the most distant people. It's a gilui to the most distant people. Meaning, when the king is when the king is in the field, which is darga nemucha. It's a very low level. They don't even have a comprehension of the king. So you say to Mizu, not only this, he's not even awakening to feel the person. In other words, like this, when the king is in the palace, the Rebbe writes in 12 at the bottom, when the king is in the palace, people are waiting years to go in. Halavai, they can get a glimpse of the king. Get a glimpse of the king. That's a tremendous level of yira and pachad. When the king is in the field, because he's accessible, you don't have that longing. You have longing when you can't get something. If you can get it, it's not a longing. You're there, you don't need it. Now the Rebbe says in the Maamar, whoever wants, that means you have to want. It's not the king awakening it within you. You have to want. These that they're going out to receive the king, that's Ratzon Shalem, that's their own will. He says, Elosh, and the scene is Koyach La'akbos Pnei HaMelech. But this Koyach, but where do they get the Koyach to still want to go out to see the king? The king is not making you want, but he's giving you the Koyach that you should want. But the wanting is the avodah of the Jew, going out to meet the king. The koyach is aidei shemelech basada. The king comes out into the field. So he says, now you have the ability to come see me, but you have to want. Shal b'yeis basada yashner reshus v'yecheles. You have the permission and the ability. Okay, so this is what the Rebbe is explaining. Elul is not the Melech B'Eichel Malchusay. That's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. That is the level of Gilui where there's a pachad of the king, and you're waiting years to go in to see the king. That's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. But that awakens within the person the actual awe and fear of the king, Bittul. Elul is not the king not awakening Bittul. The king's out in the field like everybody else. Okay? Lahavdil, I mean, it's not at all in any realm of, you have like this, president is always, you can't go see him, yeah? But when he's going campaigning for re-election, he's all over the place.
Ice cream.
Huh?
Having ice cream.
Whatever, he's all over the place. So it's the same thing. You don't have the same awe and fear of the president in the White House, Kaviyachol. I mean, it's a stupid mushroom because nobody fears him, not in the White House, not out of the White House. No, because he doesn't have a din of a melech. It's not a melech. I mean, years ago, huh? Yeah, he's the CEO of America. No, there's a lot of mishalim with the Tsar. In the Sikhs, they bring down the story with the Tsar. The Tsar told him, the fact that I'm here should cause you awe and bittul. He wasn't dressed, whatever. There's a lot of different various stories. But the bottom line is, the king in the field, he's a melech, but there's no aim of a pachat. The aim of a pachat of the king is causing you to have bittul. That's in the palace now. He's ma'ered the bittul. You go in the house, you get this aim of a pachat. In the field, there's no aim of a pachat. All he's doing is giving you the ability, no matter how far you are away from Hashem, even in the level of midbar, they can also come to see the king.
Seems like there is no proper Vedodi without any Ledodi.
That's what he says. In order to come to Daidili of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you need Ani Ledodi. Without Ani Ledodi, you don't have Daidili. Correct.
Like a ladder.
In davening, can you come to Shemona Esrei before Pesukah without Pesukah Zimmer and Birchas Krishma? You can't. You could just stand Shemona Esrei, but it's not the same if you're davening Shemona Esrei after Pesukah Zimmer and Birchas Krishma and all that. It's a different avodah.
Everything in the Torah.
What?
Everything in life is like that.
The Eibishter didn't create us as adults. Adam Rish was created as an adult, 20-year-old man. We are not created a 20-year-old man. The Eibishter created us in stages. And each stage in a person's life is important for the development of the person. A person that had a messed up childhood, so to speak, not that it's impossible, nothing's impossible, but it's very difficult for them to be a proper adult, a sane, normal adult, a constructive adult. You know what I mean? A functioning adult. What is it, being a kid playing with little toys, what does it have to do with being a mature adult? Because the Abish has set up everything in a system. You have to, there's a process. Just like from the beginning of creation until Mashiach is a process. There has to be this and the flood and then this and that and ups and downs and there you go. Right? We learn many times. The same thing in everybody's life. There has to be infant, toddler, school, elementary, high school, past high school. It's a process. What?